Moving on to the last and final segment of today's show, you know that we had to get into it. The Tennessee Titans on Sunday went out there in Nashville at home, and they defeated the Chiefs by a final score of 27-3. And I think there are so many things to talk about from this game, so many perspectives to talk about, and I will start here. Really good job by the Titans. The fact that they were able, in a 6-day span, to pick up wins over Kansas City and Buffalo. And even though the Titans before that little stretch were playing well, they were 3-2, they still had some moments that really made you scratch their head. For example, losing to the Jets, getting blown out in week 1 by the Arizona Cardinals. And I totally understand the Cardinals are one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL, the only remaining undefeated team. But Tennessee, I expected them to perform a little bit better in that game, and they obviously got blown out. But for them to win 2 games against Buffalo and Kansas City, both at home in a 2-game stretch, is super impressive, and I believe it should put them in the conversation for contenders in the AFC. Derrick Henry is the kind of player that as long as he is on your team, you are going to have a legitimate chance to win. He is performing on a Hall of Fame level over the past 2.5 years, and it's crazy because with running backs, when you have a sustained level of excellence, usually it's not supposed to continue on a consistent basis over a span of a year or two, and Derrick Henry has proven that could sometimes be wrong as he has really been able to elevate his game. The Titans, I believe, in terms of a passing offense, look like a much better team when A.J. Brown is healthy. Ryan Tannehill and A.J. really played well, and good job by the Titans. I'll give them credit for this performance. But the main storyline from this game has to come from the Chiefs' perspective. And this is another game where Kansas City showed that so far this season, they are the most disappointing team in the NFL. And I totally understand that throughout Patrick Mahomes' first couple years in the NFL, he did some absolutely incredible things. He was able to lead the Kansas City Chiefs to 3 consecutive AFC Championship game appearances. He was able to win an MVP his first year. He was able to win a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP his second year. And in his third year, in the games that he started, Kansas City went 14-1, 15-1, and they made it to the Super Bowl. He won some playoff games as well. Mahomes has had as good of a start in his first 3 years in the NFL as anyone we've really ever seen. There weren't many people, and I believe it was appropriate, I believe it was rightfully so, who were comparing Patrick Mahomes to Tom Brady. That was the trajectory his career was looking at. But it's the NFL. The NFL is the kind of sport where it reminds you, as long as you have consistent players who always have a chance to win, but once you put that team together, once you win on a consistent basis like Kansas City has, not only does the league's target and the league's eyes get bigger on you, I feel like one reason why Kansas City hasn't necessarily been as good this year as they've been in years past is because when you play a team like Kansas City, it is literally your Super Bowl. You have to come ready to play from all assets, and there used to be a certain fear factor with Kansas City, right? Over the last couple of years, when you faced this team, it was almost the mentality of, we have to play a perfect game to win. But so far this season, it hasn't been that at all, and it really starts with the turnovers. Before this game, Kansas City had many instances throughout the start of the season where you could look at some of their losses, really everyone besides the loss against Buffalo where they clearly just got dominated, and you could have just said, okay, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't fumble the ball against the Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City easily could have won that game. You could look at the game against the Los Angeles Chargers, and it's clear that I don't even think Kansas City's defense necessarily played badly in that game. It was just the fact that once again in the first half, their offense could not stop turning the ball over, and I totally understand that it is appropriate to think that at some point this season, the offense, it's too good to keep on doing that, but at the same time, we've literally been saying that over the last couple games, so it is apparent that Kansas City, they just turn the ball over on a consistent basis. Mahomes has thrown 15 interceptions in his last 15 games. Personally, I am not worried about Patrick Mahomes. I think he's going to be fine. He is the least of the Chiefs' concerns. Their defense obviously has not been getting the job done. Andy Reid, I do think that he is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He has done such a great job with Patrick Mahomes, developing him since he's gotten into the league. He played the situation perfectly, allowing Mahomes to sit out for a year and really gain experience in an NFL locker room, see what defenses around the league look like, and learn behind a very good veteran in Alex Smith. But Andy Reid's coaching has not been great so far this season. Steve Spagnuolo is a championship-winning defensive coordinator, and it took him until last week to finally realize that Daniel Sorensen was just not getting the job done at safety, and that it's time to put Juan Thornhill in the game, but that didn't matter. Kansas City, reality has hit them. They have to realize that right now, even if they pick things back up, and I do think as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy, and by the way, that hit that he took in this game, it was scary. I'm really thankful that he didn't get a concussion, and I really do hope that he is going to be 100% and will be ready to play coming up. The Chiefs will be at home Monday Night Football against the New York Giants. But there were many things that went wrong in this game for Kansas City. And if Mahomes would have been out and would have been absent for a week or two stretch, that would have really been the final nail in the coffin for Kansas City. But as long as Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill, and Andy Reid are out there, Kansas City is always going to have a chance. I still do think the Chiefs are going to somehow, some way, find a way to make it in the playoffs. But right now, when you compare them to some of the other teams in the division, the Chargers, not only did they beat Kansas City, but they look like the better team. The Chargers also won that game in Arrowhead. They still have one more meeting. I believe it's actually on Thursday Night Football, when the Chiefs go to SoFi Stadium to take on the Chargers. But this game really just showed me that the Chiefs are this. They are a team that, especially compared to some of their squads of years past, this 2021 version of Kansas City is just flat out not good enough. They need to be better if they're going to want to win games. The problem is they've been turning the ball over and they've been playing poor defense on a consistent basis. I mean, Frank Clark, a guy who was key to the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl run. He was a guy that over the last couple of years, the reason why Kansas City brought him in the first place was because he was a dog. He was a guy on that defense that was tough, that could get others fired up, that could come ready in a street fight kind of game, a punch you in the mouth kind of situation, and he is awful. He is one of the 7 most highest paid players in the league, despite the big, lengthy 10-year contract Mahomes got for all that money. Currently, Frank Clark, the defensive end, has the largest cap hit on the Kansas City Chiefs, and he has done nothing. He has 6 tackles, which is as many as Chiefs wide receiver Marcus Kemp. If Frank Clark doesn't play better, the Chiefs aren't going to win football games, and he is literally stealing money. As how, in God's name, is he one of the 7 most highest paid players in the NFL? Frank Clark has been a massive disappointment. You also look at Jarran Reed, a guy who, look, we know he's not Aaron Donald, but he was a guy that was considered one of the better low-key offseason moves by Brent Veach, a general manager who I totally understand. He's put together a Super Bowl winning roster. He was the one that drafted Patrick Mahomes, but he has missed on many assets of the Chiefs roster. Besides Tyreek Hill, which weapon in terms of the wide receivers scares you for Kansas City? Besides Hill and Kelsey, which weapon really scares you? It's not Byron Pringle. It's not Demarcus Robinson. Josh Gordon is a name, but he hasn't really done much since he's gotten into Kansas City. So they don't really have any weapons that scare you outside of Hill and Kelsey. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a running back who the Chiefs took in the first round. I had no problem with that pick. You guys know my theory when it comes to Edwards-Helaire. He is a guy that I had no problem with Kansas City drafting in the first round because they were a team that won the Super Bowl. But let's face it, so far this season, when Edwards-Helaire has gotten hurt, the running game before this week didn't really take that big of a step backwards with Williams running the thing. We also saw what Damian Williams was able to do with that Super Bowl team. So the running game hasn't really been getting going for Kansas City. And I do think that the Chiefs need to be a team that is a little bit more simple. Mahomes, as great as he is one of the more difficult players in the league to coach just because he's a little bit erratic. Watching Kansas City on multiple 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7s, Mahomes lined up in the shotgun and he's backpedaling a little bit too far on the throws, and before you know it, he's 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage when it's 3rd and 7. That is my only small concern with Kansas City in terms of the structure of their team right now. Obviously, you have the defense, but Andy Reid, the coaching hasn't been as high of a level this year as it's been in years past. And when you combine that with the defense and the way that's been struggling, the offensive line didn't play very well at all in this game against Tennessee. I don't think that's Kansas City's number one concern, but they are filling in a lot of new guys with rookies Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. That was the big priority for Kansas City after the Super Bowl, given everything that went on with the Buccaneers pass rush. But it's weird because it's almost like Kansas City overreacted to one game, and even though the offensive line was a priority, sure, they didn't focus enough on gaining assets for that defense that was all right last year. You always consider Kansas City's defense as not one of the best defensive units in the NFL, but a defensive unit that is always somewhat good enough to get the job done, especially in a big moment when you need them to make one stop. Over the last 2 years, they've been able to do that, and then usually the offense is able to take care of business. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they are now sitting at 3-4 after losing 27-3 to the Titans. Once again, that was a really impressive win by the Tennessee Titans in a span of 6 days, beating Buffalo, beating Kansas City, They look like right now the best team in the AFC South. Mike Vrabel deserves a lot of credit for getting his team ready to play for these two games. Tennessee's defense has been much better than expected. Shane Waldron, Todd Dowling, confusing Seattle and Tennessee there. Todd Dowling, the new Titans offensive coordinator, he's been getting the job done, a guy that I was very skeptical of, and I was curious to see how Tennessee would be able to replace Arthur Smith. He is now obviously the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. So Tennessee deserves credit. Derrick Henry, as long as he is in the lineup, they're a legitimate contender in the AFC. Titans 27, Chiefs 3. Kansas City is in big trouble. I think after watching them for 7 weeks, for a while now, these are the Kansas City Chiefs. They are who we thought they were, and it's not a very good football team. It's crazy to say, but when you watch them on a week-in, week-out basis, they're not good right now. They have to be better.